Welcome everybody to Raising the Glass, the Tipple. You asked, we listened. You asked for more content, more regular episodes. And so the Tipple is exactly what it says it is. Think of it as a short little something on the side, coming into your ears via your podcasting streaming fortnightly, with the main episode following as it would in its normal cycle. So that means once a fortnight, you can listen to some amazing voices from the drinks industry. I am delighted to welcome Miranda Ballard to the first episode of The Tipple.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Miranda is probably going to highlight the difference between the main episode and the Tipple better than anybody else. So whilst the main episode is about lived experiences, journeys, sharing our learnings, the Tipple is really going to try and get under the skin of what might be happening in the industry, as well as some learnings and some hints and tips, but getting really into the crux of some of the things that we're seeing. So Miranda first came into the Raising the Glass community back in April, where she came to one of the events. She very kindly agreed to be on the panel as a guest for the Q&A. And Miranda does what Miranda does brilliantly, and what I sometimes find myself doing with her, which is going down a rabbit warren of data. At that Q&A panel, we talked a lot about some of the data and the insight that the data was showing us, because Miranda actually works for NielsenIQ, specialising in small and medium businesses, and has a wealth of knowledge in this space, having owned your own business as well. But what you'll hear from us today is a little bit about some of that data, probably some of those rabbit warrens we're going to go into.
Definitely.
And really helping us ask some of the questions in a very data insight-led way. Before we get into that, though, Miranda, just tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for having me in the inaugural Tipple. I feel like we should have had a little Tipple as well.
Little Tipple.
But thank you so much. And I love chatting to you about all these FMCG related things, beverages, and I love what you do with RTG. I run the SMB teams around NielsenIQ. So it's a lovely, big, juicy global data company, 87 markets, 40,000 employees. And mostly for 100 years, they've done an incredible job of producing, delivering, and selling our data product to the big global retailers, the large market leading retailers, and the big global manufacturers. And then occasionally we would have a go at selling our data to small businesses, but it was expensive and prohibitive and clunky and difficult to use. And it was like handing the keys of a Ferrari to a new driver. So I had the privilege in the UK, first of all, of designing our products, making them lighter, simpler, more affordable, and going and selling that to small businesses. And the reason I got the job in the first place is that I used to own my own business. I was a co-founder with my husband. I'm a butcher by trade. And we had a meat company based in London. We had 5 shops around North London. And we supplied Waitrose, Ocado, Cooperative. And we did wonderfully well. Parts of it worked very well, but ultimately the whole company did not. And we lost it and thought that our plan A was over and had no idea what would happen. But plan B happened, and I came to work here, and I could share what the data feels like, not just what it looks like. And I think that and my incredible teams led to some huge success. And we added a lovely, large department and fast-growing department to this business. And I now run all the SMB teams across the world in 77 markets, which is about 350 employees and about $250 million.
And I think we'll definitely get you onto the main podcast, because those lived experiences, those learnings, and I know you talked about it when you were at the Raising the Glass networking event in terms of that learnings. And as you say there, your plan A, suddenly you were scrabbling for a plan B.
Yeah.
What a plan B.
I know. And by total luck and weird universe stuff, but a lovely plan B.
Let's call you out a little bit on that. It's not just luck, though. And yes, maybe there's some universal stuff, and maybe there's a bit of being in the right place at the right time. But what you have brought to that company and what you've done in that space, none of that is luck. You are a force to be reckoned with, which our listeners will definitely hear by the end of this episode.
Well, thank you. It's incredibly kind of you to say. A lot of work to be done, but I do love it. I think I have my dream job.
So at that networking event, frantically we exchanged a few messages beforehand, and you went, I think I found something amazing. And that something amazing was shared at the Raising the Glass event. It then went on to be the base of some work that you shared with the By Women Built community.
Yes.
And there's definitely something in it. So what is the amazing thing that you found?
Well, going down a rabbit warren and getting wonderfully distracted and carried away, we know, and even consumers would know, but certainly the retailers and the manufacturers know, that growth, the two metrics or three metrics of growth, value, volume, unit, have told a different story in the last few years. Value has gone up, which looks good, but we also, every consumer is feeling the impact of inflation. So though we can see value going up in almost every super category, every category, and total FMCG, when we look at volume, kilos and litres, it tells a different story, and it shows either much smaller growth, flat, or decline. So yes, value is going up, the amount through the tills, but we're not selling anymore. The businesses don't feel the benefit. So we were looking, and you and I were chatting about women-led drinks brands, alcoholic and non-alcoholic. And was that happening to them? And I sort of started to pull down this thread and created a sum across those women-led brands and was expecting to see exactly the same trend. Obviously, percentages from a smaller base, you're careful not to compare. But I thought we would see value going up and volume at least slower. But it wasn't. It didn't. It was bucking the trend. So although we can't claim women-led drinks brands are growing faster or bigger or better than total FMCG, because the absolute growth is obviously still a lot smaller, it hasn't been impacted by the trend and the pressure. Their volume was going up 30% in places. Their distribution, so the appetite by the buyers, those all-important buyers that we depend our lives on, are listing them and not just growing their number of stores, but expanding their assortment. And that's because the consumers are buying them, despite also the very clear parallel when we look at price per litre, that these brands are more premium. And maybe that's because they're designed to be more premium, or they simply don't yet have the distribution to try and bring the prices down with the economies of scale. So higher price point, bucking the trend across every category, not just beverages, getting more listings, bigger assortment, higher number of SKUs, and higher in value, volume, and unit. Well, that was pretty cool.
And so you sit there and you go, tick, job done. But what's really interesting is you said something there about increased distribution. Buyers are engaging with the products and they're putting them on shelves, and then shoppers are coming in and buying them, consumers are consuming them. But if I think about some of those brands, with my role, I'm very privileged to know some of them, and that some of them may be women-founded brands, but not necessarily all of them. I don't know. If I'm a buyer, I might not know that. If I'm a shopper, I probably don't know that. And if I'm a consumer, I possibly don't know that. So interestingly, there is this dynamic of, whilst we can't make a big claim, they were both leaning towards saying that there is definitely something in these businesses.
Yeah.
There's a causation versus correlation conversation of, are these women-founded businesses doing well because they're women-founded and people are buying because they're women-founded?
Yeah.
Perhaps not. Some may be carrying the By Women Built logo. Or is there something about women-founded businesses right now that's cutting through based on whether it is the product or the branding or what that product is doing for me as an individual shopper and consumer?
Yes. Well, this is where I sort of have to slightly part from the actual data and bring in my own anecdotal, and of course with that biases. It seems to be that, yes, this is happening, and the correlation is they happen to be women-led. But it could, of course, be any number of reasons that they are bringing in innovation and differentiation. Because then when I look at SKUs and sub-brands that belong to the big global beverage companies, it's also innovation and differentiation that's making them stand out as well. So I think when I compared women-led beverages brands, we could see growth upwards of 22, 23% increase in distribution. But when I looked at all challenger brands, whoever owns them, it was about 19%. So it's still challenger brands are bringing something to the shelves. And it happens that some of women-led beverages brands are even over-indexing on that. So I think a huge proportion of this is down to innovation and excitement to the aisle for the retailer to see this is bringing something different to their consumers, leaning into the data that we can see. 46% of people think that they will be the same or better off next year. So that change in the air in the UK of people saying, I think it's going to get better. I will trade up. I will buy something more premium, or I'm spending less going out, etc. So that comes back to the shelves if we're just talking off trade. But I think that in the data, it's shown that even over-indexing on that differentiation, it happens to be women-led. So we know from other stats not owned by NielsenIQ that there is a high proportion of women-led ideas that answered a need that they had. And maybe that's what's driving the over-index. If they're hitting something that consumers need and connecting with that pound, then maybe that's what it is. It's going to a retailer saying, you don't have this and you need it.
And the pound is shifting to a certain extent. So if we think about the seismic shift that we're seeing, if you think about certainly when probably you and I started out in our careers, if you thought about a pensioner, I thought about somebody maybe sat around for a lot of the day eating a hard-boiled sweet that we probably can't name. If I think about pensioners now, and there's a lot in social media where people will talk about, actors and actresses and presenters who are of a pensionable age, who are still technologically savvy, still very independent in a different way. Yeah. And then we've suddenly got this generation of women coming through with this spending power that is perhaps not being talked to or marketed to. So there's this latent demand. And then suddenly you get this product which talks to me about collagen, because I'm now of an age where it's not just a vanity thing from a collagen point of view. I need it for my joints, or it's talking to me about protein, but I might not want the calories of a protein milk drink, or as you and I have talked about a lot, fiber. How
Absolutely.
can I get more fiber? In the UK, we have real issues with consuming enough fiber. So what's really interesting for me is, as you said, how many of these products which are commanding a higher premium is sometimes because price and economies of scale, or sometimes because more added benefit, but targeted added benefit. Have we finally got people creating products based on their experiences that are being brought to the shelves in an authentic way?
I really believe that. It's fascinating where there's trends in clean labeling in all categories, but really hitting hard. Nebraska now starting to actually ban dye colors. And then shoppers saying, yes, 68% support this, 36% strongly support it, but I still want an alternative to the thing I'm buying the whole time. So the big incumbent companies are going to have to be so smart about changes that they make to pack claims, clean labeling, etc. Whereas new ones coming into the market, they haven't known anything different. We've been talking about aspartames a lot in the media for a few years. So maybe you don't put it in the first place. So now your consumer base doesn't need to be taken on a whole journey, and you don't have to stack millions in above the line spend explaining what you did and it's okay. These new brands, this new world, well, they will be like your kids. They wouldn't know a world before smartphones. They didn't know a world before.
They don't know what a dial-up sounds like.
Exactly. So I think for those ones, they're in a better position to answer the consumer demand. And if they, as exactly as you said, if they were looking for something that wasn't there, and that was the driver behind creating it, there's a really good chance they're hitting more of those trends and those needs that the buyer has, because the buyer is delivering to the needs of the consumer. So that will be wonderful to look, and we can go down another rabbit warren and start looking at the pack claim trends across those too. But there is, if you think of hip hop, Perfect Head, Trip, these are clean claim, these are modern recipes, and they weren't leaning on the recipes of the past. And if that was because it matched and married with the image of the co-founder, the family founders, and the well-being, and where they were using the tributaries of the output and the brand profile raising, it already matched it. They're not having to go back and completely re-engineer their recipe.
And I think, again, it's that authenticity. So all three of those examples, Hip Hop, Trip, Perfect Head, all built on an experience that those founders and co-founders felt could be changed or improved with a product that could help from a dietary point of view. So Hip Hop will unashamedly saying that they're getting real about things. It's about real product, real health benefits, but really great tasting pop. There's no compromise there. If you think about the Trip story, no more authentic story than actually going on a journey to be able to walk down the aisle on your wedding day and experiencing that benefit and then bringing it into a product that just makes it more accessible for more people. And Perfect Head as well, another great example of bringing, almost actually reversing the matcha journey, bringing things mainstream through easily accessible, and then seeing the explosion of the benefit in other areas as well. That's got to be the ultimate compliment.
Love it. Win, win, win. And I defer to your expertise here as a buyer, but there must be this wonderful relief when you said, oh, thank you. You're not coming and telling me what you'll end up doing with it. You've already made the product. It's ready.
Yeah, it's ready. There's a few things in life that you can't escape from. That old thing of people buy from people. Of course you do. You build up a rapport, but it's the same on shelf. People buy from people a lot more these days because of the role of social media. If I'm picking up this product, particularly with social media trends, and you only need to look at something like Prime to see how quickly that came into the market. Crazy. And now where it is. People buying from people. But people are also buying into functionality much more than ever before. We want more nutrient density. We want more from that calorie. We want more from our pound. And products that make a claim that don't deliver are not going to be the products that are picked up from the shelf time and time again.
I totally agree. And I think that's the confidence, the need to find that differentiation, because by the time they've got to you, they will have been turned down by many angel investors or family office or bank loans, So I think the need to be super clear and confident with that positioning and that differentiation for that incremental value to the industry. They've tested that 100 times before they get to the retailer buyer.
So let's talk about investment. So whether it's because they're challenger brands, whether it's because they're women founders, whether it's because they found a niche or they're delivering something that nobody else will, or they're just bang on trend, or whether it's a little bit of all of that. Statistically, it is proven that businesses with more diversity in them deliver better commercially. We know that. We've seen it. And we've got this nugget of data here, which is very well tested by you, that says, although we can't necessarily get to cause versus correlation, these businesses that are women founded in the challenger brand space are still doing better than other challenger brands and other mainstream brands.
Yes, outperforming.
So why is only 2% of funding going into these businesses?
I think, just as you were saying before, we buy from people, and I think we fund and invest in people. I know that from personal experience, because my husband and I certainly didn't have a viable, we were a long way off a profitable idea when we raised money from angel investors, but we liked them and they liked what we were doing, and we got on and we formed this wonderful friendship. I mean, we were only 26 when we started our brand, so we were really looking for business parents actually, and they stepped in and did that role. But it wasn't our P&L. I mean, we barely started. It was the need for a personal investment in us, and we were lucky to get it. I think that presents, as ever, the greatest opportunity and the greatest obstacle, because what we also needed to show in the room is that we had nothing else to do, nothing else on our plate. You have us. You want in on this. We don't have a business to offer you. Can't promise you a thing, but we promise you us. We give you everything. And statistically, women cannot offer everything without cost. And so that's either without cost of sacrifice or without cost of redistributing for somebody else to do the job. I believe that's something. So this is anecdotal here. I can't see this in the data, but the opportunity that presents, especially for beverages. So 1 in every £5 spent in the UK is in beverages, and 1 in every £5 is spent in FMCG, and 1 in every £5 of that is in beverages. That's your opener. I mean, for women led, like if you're going to invest in a super category, come to beverages. It's also got the lowest amount of private labels, so the best differentiation for brands. So I think we need the numbers to talk, but the balance is it needs to be the personal relationship. Now, we come from 17,000 years of communicating with each other. I mean, we should be the best at it in the room. It's just how do we get the number of people in the room? We need the conversion rate. We might not start with the same number of applicants, but the conversion rate should over-index. And if we can then encourage the next generation of founders to be male and female of equal measures, it will become equal. But it goes right back to the source, doesn't it? How many are starting in the first place? How many get the meeting? But again, from personal experience, to sit across from a board table with angel investors, I promised them my whole life, but I didn't at that point have children. Ro and I weren't even married, or we were engaged. I mean, we had nowhere else to be but to do that. And I think that level of expectation perhaps is what we should adjust, that doesn't equal success. We went bust. So working every hour doesn't work. Did for Steve Jobs, but he also died young. But so we need to just take another run up on what those investor expectations are, or maybe the investor isn't asking it. Our assumption is that's what they're looking for. So that moment before you go in the room and promise them your soul, well, we shouldn't be doing that. They shouldn't expect it. We shouldn't assume it. We should go and say, I'm super smart. I'm going into beverages. You're crazy if you don't back this. I've got this. I've got this. I've got this. Here's the data from us or anybody. It doesn't have to be ours. But here's why you should invest in us, and not a conversation about whether I'm going to have enough time because who's got the kids.
You've hit the nail on the head, I think, of that assumption. But we do go in through our own lens. And I do think about all the yeses I said in my career. And having had the privilege of speaking to a lot of people, in particular a lot of women through the podcast, there is something around, we say yes. Yeah. And we say yes, and then how do I do that? As opposed to how do I do that? Yes. And I think for me, again, straw poll of one, I said yes a lot more because of, I suppose, a gratitude of being recognised to be asked to do it, and also probably some deep-rooted that I probably couldn't verbalise for a long time of, if I say no, I might not get another yes.
Yeah.
And again, it's compromise. There are only so many hours in the day. And I'm not here. I've seen a lot as we're rushing up to the summer holidays. Good luck to everybody out there around.
Talk of a need for a tipple.
Yes, more than a tipple. You see a lot around, you only have 18 summers with your children. Now, I actually think, can we stop guilting everybody, please? Because, things like that are terrible if you're a working parent, terrible if you're a parent who think it's not getting right, terrible if you're a parent who feels that you're getting through, terrible if you're a carer who's seeing it as a challenge, terrible if you haven't got what you perceive as a privilege. I subscribe to the sentiment of the days are long, but the years are short.
Yeah.
And I subscribe to you are the only person that has to be comfortable with the compromises that you make. But I do think having conversations more about what is a viable compromise, and maybe in that instance, how many of it is you're walking to a room expecting to give everything, where actually giving your 70% might have been even more than somebody else's.
Totally. Well, I think that's it with maternity leave, isn't it? I had one of my reports. She's been with me a while, and she's just got on maternity leave 2 weeks ago. And she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry because I know you're so busy and we've got so much to do." I said, "Sarah, you are so productive. Let's look at this across 3 years. Let's look at it like we use our data. 3 years of back data. We don't look at one moment. We look at what was the 3-year aggregate growth, and her productivity against the average performer across 3 years. She could take a year and a half off and she'd still come out up. It is. We were talking about value volume. Let's use other metrics to compare output. And if you're good, you're great. I mean, there's plenty of average and below average women. But for those who are good and prepared to walk into an investor room and say, I'll give you my everything, and that's not measured by hours, my value, what I can do in 40 minutes is more than the average hour. It's not about the quantity, it's the quality. I think if those are the conversations we're having, founders, employees across every industry, but what a super cool FMCG being such an outlet for something. So, I mean, we literally need it to survive, but what a great place to spread this sort of message and movement. What a brilliant way to get into the consumer's mind. But that's, if I could change one thing, it would just be that we would stop counting performance in hours.
I think we talk a lot around, it's about output, it's measured in output. But I think we still feel as an industry that output can be demonstrated by first in, last out. And it's really sad. It's really sad to be like that. And I'm the first to say, look, if you want to chat to me first thing in the morning, you might get me on the phone and I'm probably out running. But now, to be clear, running is a very terrible trading standards indicative description. I'm moving a little bit quicker than if I was walking. But that for me allows me to come back really engaged in my work and be more productive. The parental leave question is a really interesting discussion point. Maternity leave particularly. I think there is a generation of founders growing up now being very open about some of the questions that they're going through. I'm thinking about Amelia from Bold Bean, not drinks, but still a brilliant founder.
Yeah.
And that question that they're asking of, can you have a business and can you have a baby? Means we still haven't created the environment, because that is still a question that they're trying to wrestle with. And it's not just founders. It's, can I be successful in my job here and go off and kind of come back in? And again, Lottie, in the first episode of Raising the Glass, talked about what it was like coming back in and trying to balance being brilliant at your job, because you still want to be brilliant at your job. You still want to be a brilliant founder, but you also want to be brilliant here as well. And those two can coexist, but you might have to balance your expectations on yourself.
Totally agree. I think it's choice, isn't it? That for all the terribly, terribly hard moments of owning my own business, the thing that made it all okay is I chose to be there. So when I had my son, called Angus after the beef,
does he know?
Yeah, he does. He tells people I'm named after a cow, just one, called Angus.
I'm sure lots of people can make that statement, but not because the cow's named a butchery.
So when I was in the Whittington Hospital with a 2-day-old, and my husband was sitting next to me, and we're putting in the meat order and working out how many legs a lamb will need to have in the shops for Easter weekend, I didn't feel resentment that I was forced to do that. I felt delighted that I could. And I think until I'd done it myself, I might have been horribly judgmental of a brand new mother still working from her day 2 maternity bed. But I chose to do it, which maybe that's the difference. We put, sometimes somebody employed and asked to do something is very different to a founder who chooses to do something. And I think sometimes we put the same idea of what choice means. It can be very lucky, as I am, I know you are, to love our day jobs, and we don't own our businesses we work for, but we still choose to work this and say yes to everything. And that's a gift and a perfect balance we protect. But I don't look back on that moment with any sort of regret, because I was choosing to be there. I think we could be confident to say, I will give you everything. Of course, I give the business everything. I'm literally invested heart, soul, and current account in the business. And then if you choose and you love it, there's no rule book or expectation of what you're possibly going to feel in that moment. And now my kids just love being around work all the time. Work is life and life is fun. I think it's cool for both of them to see us bringing work into home. But it's not for everyone. We just don't have a clear set of rules for it.
And I think maybe that's probably one of the big outtakes, that even with all of the data and even with all of the experience, we are, by the very nature of being human beings, trying to find connections, trying to find our tribe, trying to fit in. Yet we are all complexly complicated individuals striving to be different from everybody else.
Aren't we? I love it. Well, even at your wonderful event, Olivia needed to stop a little bit earlier to breastfeed. But I think the power of just the visibility of that for the rest of the audience, to the men and women that you gather at your event so wonderfully, would have just gone, yeah, we just make it. I always think with my own children, they're 8 and 6, so I'm still learning a lot from you ahead of me a little bit. But make it so normal, it's mundane. I just want to make it normal so that it just doesn't seem weird. And I grew up with Anita Roddick, my mum and dad talking about Anita Roddick. My nieces now love Sephora, but we already did that with the Body Shop. We loved the Body Shop. So we would go, and my mum would always talk about Anita. And she wasn't trying to make a point or a statement for her 2 daughters. She was just telling us about the founder, like we also heard about Richard Branson. But the visibility, I mean, it must be somewhere in my coding that I ended up owning my own shops. It just wasn't such a big deal for me to try. That's what I want. I want to make it super, super normal. And maybe these brands that are bucking the trends, I was looking at Thompson and Scott, the non-alcoholic. I mean, absolutely busting all the distribution benchmarks in the non-alc, even across alc. I mean, really sort of bucking some trends. And I wonder and would love to know, you're just taking a slightly different approach. Just not needing to tear it up and revolutionize, but just connecting with enough people and their hard-earned net pound. And then the retailers keep stocking the brands because the consumers are buying the brands. And then we put in media interest, and we put in angel funding, and we put in wonderful podcasts like this talking about it. And that will fuel the circle still going around, the diversity of the UK landscape, tens of thousands of startup brands, men and women owned and co-founders. It's because that little circle goes round, and that's where we see the successes in the data.
But that little circle has that seed of a start point. And I think that's really important. Sometimes we measure success by the journey run, not by the legs of that journey.
No.
And particularly in the drinks world, if you were to pick any brand that had got it right, you'd pick a big, famous soft drink brand that's within arm's reach, huge distribution, and go, that's success. Therefore, for me to be successful in this space, I have to have that distribution. And I cannot talk about the number of times people come in with a proposal and go, and so if we were in 2,000 stores, it would look like this. And you just know. And again, back to the statistics, in the right store, products can sell 20, 30, 40 units out of that store. That same product in the wrong store a week might sell 2. And so then your conversation, if you're in 2,000 stores, is not about, hey, look, we've got 40,000, 50,000 flying out of this store over here. It's about, on average, we're tracking at about 10.
Yeah.
Start, take that and water that little seed and germinate it and let it grow. But also, how do you let it grow whilst, really focusing on driving it, but in all those organic ways you're talking about? This layer of your, the marketeers will always talk to you about your bullseye customer.
Yeah.
Get that bullseye customer and then build out and always keep that bullseye customer, but that will get bigger and bigger. And think a little bit about the end journey, but don't forget to celebrate the wins along the way.
Definitely. And choose to be there.
Yes, because not everybody, I mean, we should, you talk about tens of thousands of startups and entrepreneurs. It is brilliant. What an industry to work in, where there's that much innovation and that much change, that much challenge. But that's also tens of thousands of successful startups. There are, it's hard, right? It's hard to even, you talk about your journey in your business and not making it.
Yeah.
But you did make it. For a lot of people, you made it. You had a business. And we shouldn't lose sight of that either. I think for anybody who's out there at the moment going, I'm just starting to get started, or actually the getting started is longer than I thought it might be.
Yes. I think the Innocent founder said that, didn't they? It'll take you 3 times as long and cost 3 times as much. I think they actually underestimated that a bit. Yeah.
And I think in today's world, even harder, because actually what you see as a founder story or a startup story on social media, which is so accessible, is probably maybe year 3 of that journey. And it's still in that startup phase. But again, as an industry, are we vulnerable enough to share all of the hiccups along the way? Possibly not.
Yeah. I think it's cash, isn't it? If I could pick one thing, it's funding, because it has to be funded from somewhere. So creating a noise and a buzz and sharing successes will attract the money to the industry. I think if there's, of all the man-made powers in the universe, purchasing power has to be up there. So we know it and we connect it, and whatever our job is, we're also always a consumer. And if there's money that comes in, if there's even the inclination to do it, to be thrilled by the successes and not put off by the people that didn't make it, you're still going to need cash. And how do we get the investment to come into what, by data purposes, is a no-brainer? Like, you can start selling this on a market this Saturday. Like, what other tech company, or I want to do a startup durables or something that needs a huge amount of complicated supply chain management to get going, whereas most start as a smoothie at a local fete. So the accessibility is there, and we can see lots of people go into it, but 90% of the revenue belongs to the top 10% of the trading companies, like most industries, but especially in FMCG, and not too many pass the threshold on their own without significant investment or being bought out fully by the large companies. And I love that. We talked about it a bit at your event. Wonderful news of mergers and acquisitions that included challenger brands being brought out as well. That helps. Let's talk. I have a job to talk about that. I can see it in the data, and I remind my teams, beyond just going and selling our data today, share the good news. Share Unilever buying Wild. Share good news about, and then it'll attract more people to come and put some money in. And then if we can also
attracts more people to carry on this hard journey, because
Absolutely.
And it's okay for your desire to set up a business to exit at some point. I mean, what a great success factor.
Absolutely.
And these are, to your point, the large businesses haven't necessarily got that entrepreneurial spirit and that challenger ability, because it's like turning an oil tanker sometimes. It's why they're looking for the mergers and the acquisitions.
Totally. I think I remember just having a meeting with my Waitrose buyer, and because I had a short shelf life product, it was all about wastage. And there's just only so much I could do, and we've tried to move all the levers. And I sort of stopped trying to just convince him that the wastage would come down, because I couldn't promise that. So I stopped and I said, is there anything you've been wanting to try in private label, and I could take it for a spin in my brand, because then you don't risk anything. And and he said, well, yeah, we're thinking about doing a meatloaf, and talk about saying yes and then figuring out how to do it. I said, oh, yeah, we have one. And he was like, oh, great. Well, do you want to get some samples? Yeah, absolutely. On the way home, I called my husband. We're going to need to make a meatloaf. We're going to by tomorrow. And I got straight into the kitchen, and by 2 a.m. and made something I would eat and I would buy. First thing, I only had us to test it on. And we got it listed in 180 stores eventually, but we could be so fast. The only way I wipe the floor with big brands and private label, those huge, wonderful, juicy companies that really we owe the entire industry to. That's what funds it. That's what makes it all go around. The only thing we have up against them is not rate of sale. It's not our wastage. It's our pace to innovate. That's where we can have some fun. And I would love your experience of brands actually coming to work with you and saying, let's do this. I can try something tomorrow. Again, it needs the money to come in, the funding. We had angel investment. We could immediately get a packaging print run done, which was cash up front before we'd sold it through. And then we joyously hit a horse meat scandal that year. So, fun times. But those are the things you can't control. Oh, but yeah, have you had that with the brands coming and saying, let's do this?
You see certain elements of change in your career. I think one of the big ones for me was, brands wouldn't touch own label, own brand, private label. It was, we're a brand, and why would we produce for a supermarket, which then over time comes to, if we don't do it, somebody else might. So actually, you're back to that volume discussion, and could you fill a factory by doing brand and private label as well? That was quite an interesting dynamic when that started landing in the market. The new one that I do see now is that bit of, we can do something a bit different and we can do something a bit quicker. And I think everybody's looking for differentiation, whether it's big brands, whether it's small challenger brands, whether it's retailers. And if you can make it really, really easy for a retailer. So if we were to sort of think about starting to wrap up with some hints and tips, I think one of the things I would say is, this is the thing that you have immersed yourself in for a long period of time. If you're a challenger brand, it's part of you. It's got your DNA in it. You live and breathe it. And you will find somebody who is as passionate about it as you are in the retail space. Of course you will. But also just remember that they're getting many, many emails, sample boxes, phone calls from a lot of other people operating in that space. So how do you cut through? How do you tell a retailer what that product is, why it's right for them, not why it's right for them, their shopper, in a quick, convenient way that shows a little bit about your brand. So if your brand is very functional, you're probably going to be talking about, but if it's fun, make it fun.
Oh, lovely.
We spoiler alert, buyers, they're human beings too.
No, I don't believe it.
Oh, I've seen it. I've asked. Make it a little bit fun. Make your brand come to life in a way that resonates with your brand. Back to authenticity. What would one of your hints or tips be?
Confident. Whatever it is that gives you the confidence to be in the aisle that you are in or you want to be in. And I think that confidence and passion, oodles of passion. Can you turn the passion into confidence? Because then when you're pitching for investment, or you're pitching for shelf space, or you're pitching for better payment terms with suppliers, it needs to be confidence. And I think, going back to the theme of this, if our own assumptions or other people's assumptions chip away at our confidence, that's probably the biggest detriment. So whatever it is that makes us confident, is it a business coach? Is it funding? Is it data? Is it mentors? Is it using other case studies? Is it going and shadowing another peer who might give you a day? Just, it's worth asking. Somebody who can give you confidence, spend as much time with them or that as possible.
The mentoring one's a really good shout out. So we've obviously got the Raising the Glass mentoring scheme. And you can talk about what it is that you're looking to get out of it, and whether it is confidence, just either as an employee or in a challenger brand. But confidence it impacts so much. And we talk about imposter syndrome a lot, and we talk about, let's term it improver syndrome. And I love it if you can just reframe it. But just having a chat with somebody, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about those chats where you spend half an hour with somebody and you just come away reinvigorated. So find your tribe, find those people that do it for you, and then pay it back. Be that person for somebody else. Remember, if you're in year 2, year 3, year 4 on the journey, pay it back to those people just starting. Remember what it was like the first time you wrote an email to a buyer.
It can be any experience, even if you're not going to go through the same thing, you're in a totally different product, even a different industry. Just those little moments.
I think, as you said, whether it is working with great business leadership psychologists, and think a lot of this is around, if you walked in selling a very famous soft drink or very famous beer or very famous wine or spirit, you'd walk in an inch taller sometimes. That brand identity. How do you find that brand identity in yourself? Stop shrinking yourself.
That. You need to work out your USP on the shelf.
Absolutely. And do you know what the beauty of it is? We all need to do that, whether we're working in a challenger brand, owning a challenger brand, whatever. But there is power in us all walking an inch taller. There's power in us all knowing who we are and what we stand for. The beauty of when you put it into a challenger brand founder is you just throw that further into your brand. What an amazing place to be.
Totally agree.
Miranda, thank you ever so much for being the inaugural guest on the Raising the Glass, the Tipple.
What an honour.
We have got some more in the pipeline. So we are going to be talking about data tells, stories sell. We're going to talk a little bit around power of communication. We're going to talk a little bit around what's happening to the market at the moment through changes coming in people's consumption habits with things like weight loss injections and boom or bust. We think there's a lot to play for in the drinks industry. Probably a shout out to our audience. If there's anything that you've listened to today that you think, I'd love to get the Tipple's view on that, then if you haven't worked it out already, we like a data challenge and we like a little bit of digging around. So
we like any excuse to go on a complete tangent together. Please give us more reasons to do so.
All emails at hello@raisintheglass.co.uk and they can be forwarded to Miranda. We will have some other guests interspersed as well, sharing some of their journeys. But for now, Miranda, it just remains to say a huge thank you for giving up your time and having a little tipple with us.
I loved it. Thank you so much for having me.
That is the end of episode 1. If you've got anything you want to share, please reach out. Please please subscribe. It makes a huge difference. And don't forget to tune in for the next episode.